say, what is learning? Also, the learning is the process of acquiring, applying new knowledges, skills, attitudes, behavior. It does not include only transferring knowledges, right? It requires practice to accustom with skills or attitude, like morals, the consequence of moral behaviors. These are all included in learning process. Also, like teaching, the learning is also intentional. Just studying in the classroom is not, or incidental. It's just occurring through everyday experiences. Good, effective for the learning is dependent on students' motivation. If student doesn't have motivation to learn knowledge, skills, behaviors, attitudes, it is nothing. Without motivation, it seems like they learning, but for instance, they just forget everything. It is not learning without motivation. So to bring the motivation, to give motivation to the students, for them to learn in classroom, teacher should give active engagement. All students in the classroom, they need to participate in discussions, problem solving, and projects. These are all included in active engagement. Also, to bring the motivation, teacher gives encouragement to students for them to have critical thinking. Students, they analyze, they evaluate, and also they synthesize the information. They create something out of information. And then the retention and applications. Always the knowledge, skills, attitude, they learn, which is stored, and then also it should be used in different contexts. Like they can practice, they have to practice in everyday life of their children. Like I said before, we have to consider teaching and learning. Those two topics are not working independently. They depend each other. Okay, so we have to consider there's relationship between teaching and learning. Those two topics, teaching and learning, it is an interdependent process. When you teach students, you always have to consider interdependent process. When you teach, sometimes maybe you have to always consider that put yourself in student's position, because students have different, various knowledge levels, different, cultural backgrounds. Also, there are different level of how well they can learn about new things. So you always have to consider those factors. So effective education that happens when there is dynamic interactions between teachers, instruction, right? Instruction was focused on student-centered point of view, right? And then also teacher has to consider bring students' engagement in the classroom. So they are interdependent each other. It is important. Not always teaching is working 100%. Not always learning is working 100%. They interdependent each other. So furthermore, we're gonna look up the pedagogical theories. So the modern educational theories, such as constructivism, that is emphasized that learning is an activity, that is the process where teacher serves as guidance rather than just source of information. Teacher is not just knowledge of library of knowledge. It's not just source of information. Teacher's role is giving students the guidance to they can learn, they can find the way student can learn better. So guidance is more important than giving information to the students. So last slide, there was interdependent relations between teaching and learning, right? And then also when you teach to students, you have to fully understand, recognize that the role of teacher teachers serve multiple functions beyond delivering the knowledge. You are just not the person who teach to the student. You transfer the knowledge to the students. You have to understand you have multiple role as teacher to the students. Here, basically instructor. That means you are providing the structured learning experiences to the students. Also, you have another role, facilitator, that is encourages exploration and inquiries to the students. At the same time, you have to become the mentor. You need to support students' emotional, academical support. You always try to understand emotionally, academically, how students have difficulty with those. So when you find something your students are struggling with, you have to be mentor. You have to talk about, you have to give ideas to overcome those difficulties when students are in the learning process. Also, you are the evaluator, you are assessor. That means you also have to find out how the students' learning progress. You have to know how students have difficulties of learning in certain subjects. So you have to be supervising the learning progresses, and then you also assess how the progress is getting done. Then you give the feedbacks to each progress of students' learning. So, one more time, teacher's role is you are instructor, you are facilitator, you give encouragement, you become a mentor. You always discuss things with students' difficulties. Give them ideas, give them supporting encouragement. And then lastly, you are evaluator. Sometimes you take the test, right? So you like to see how the learning process is going. Then you get the result of the test, then you give them the feedback. It's not only applied to knowledge transfer, right? Sometimes students, kids learning skills, attitudes, those things also included in assessment. Also, there is another role. We were talking about the teacher's role, right? Also, there are learners' role, students' role. We have to talk about. So, the students are active participants in the learning process. They are engaged with course material through reading, writing, and discussing. That's basic learning process, right? And then students, they apply the knowledge in real world contexts. Also, they reflect on the learning experience to enhance their understandings. So, students' role is not only receiving knowledge from teacher, right? They also need to apply the old learning at the classroom to real world context. They should be able to apply those learnings to real world context. Also, they do have ability to reflect about what they're learning and then how they apply to real world context. So those are students' role. 안녕하십니까? Okay, shortly we're gonna watch short video about teaching and learning. Definition of teaching and learning.
Learning in international youth projects is mainly a mixture of non-formal and informal learning. It aims to help young people to grow and to develop various competencies. In other words, young people involved in youth work are on a journey where they are encouraged to become aware of their own learning and take charge of that process. As young people go through their learning journey, they can benefit from people who support them, known as facilitators of learning. Youth workers, mentors, coaches or trainers can take on the role of the facilitator. Yet rather than dominate.
Okay, here the short video in the beginning, it says teacher is facilitator. Teacher is not only the person who transferring the knowledge to the students. You become a mentor too. Facilitating means you give support, emotional support, academic support to the students. That is facilitator.
Learning process, they give the learners sufficient space to experiment and explore. After all, it is the learner's journey. The learner and the facilitator can be seen as partners, each with their own distinctive roles and responsibilities in that learning partnership. Both bring their specific resources, expertise, and knowledge to the table. The facilitator is able to apply pedagogical approaches and is responsible for providing support. The learner is an expert when it comes to their own experience, including motivations, interests, expectations, and resources, and they take responsibility for their own learning. As in any good partnership, a learning partnership works best when it is built on trust, mutual respect, and cooperation. Other important aspects are appreciation for and recognition of each other's qualities and competences. The facilitator's task is to help prepare the ground on which the learning path can unfold. With the facilitator's support and encouragement, the learner chooses their learning direction and prepares for the journey ahead. Along the way, The facilitator helps the learner to become more aware of how they learn best. They suggest appropriate activities and resources and provide ways to assess and document the learning journey. This way, the learner comes out of this partnership as a more empowered individual who is ready to embark on other journeys of their own.
Okay, one more time. Teacher's role is not just about a teacher, person who transfers the knowledge to the students. You have to become facilitator. Facilitator includes instructor, mentor. So you give encouragement to the students. Sometimes you have to give them the motivation to students. Since they have the motivation, the students, they kind of find out the reason why they have to learn those things. Okay. And then briefly, this is a very important theology about teaching and learning. Okay, basically, when you study the educational, course, you may heard about those theories. Okay, first, that is behaviorism. Okay, later we're gonna, go more about. We're gonna find out more about those theories. So anyhow, here I'm gonna show you a brief explanation about those important three theories: behaviorism, cognitism, constructivism. You guys may heard of the person. The psychologist B.F. Skinner. He developed behaviorism. In his theory, the learning is the response to external stimuli. Stimuli is like, the kind of trigger, that make you do a certain behavior. And then with behaviorism, reinforcement and punishment that makes good behaviors. Okay, just know that reinforcement and punishment. Okay, and then remember external stimuli. It is some kind of trigger. Okay, that gives the reason why we make certain kind of results. And cognitism, that is developed by John Piaget. You guys may have heard of this guy. Cognitism is emphasizing the role of mental process in learning. He viewed learning is just active mental process. He emphasizes about memories, problem solving, and critical thinking. Okay, that is theory of cognitism. Another theory, there are many different theories about pedagogical theory, okay? Educational theory. But these are most common, famous three theories. So last one is constructivism, which was developed by Vygotsky. He has opinion about constructivism is making the learners actively construct their own understanding. He views students they may have the ability to learn things on their own. That is constructivism. Okay? So this is learning through experience and social interactions. And this theory focuses on student-centered learning and collaborations. That is constructivism. Later, we're going to see more about those theories. Okay, brief explanation. Short video. This video explains about those three theories. Okay, behaviorism, cognitism, and constructivism.
The 5 learning theories. Today I will talk about the 5 learning theories, how they work, and how they differ between each other. No 2 students are alike, and the way every person learns will vary. Our brains are all unique, and our experiences all contribute to the different ways we learn. So let's see what these 5 theories are. To better explain them, I'll use some simple and practical examples that, in my opinion, are always the best way to clearly explain complex concepts. Theory number 1, behaviorism. Behaviorist learning theory, or behaviorism, utilizes key ideas from the work of Buris Frederick Skinner, an American psychologist, who theorized that learning occurs through a series of rewards or punishments. While Skinner believed that all learning could occur this way, the behaviorist theory is most commonly utilized in classrooms today as a tool for behavior management. According to Skinner, rewards increase the likelihood that behaviors will be repeated, while punishments decrease the likelihood of repetition. He also theorized that rewards and punishments could be either positive or negative in nature. What is it?
Okay, it is simple, right? Behaviorism. Students' behavior good in classroom, teacher give reward. That is encouraging to the students. They can do better behavior in classroom. Yeah. That is reward. Or other way, the punishment, right? Some kids have problem with making relationship with peer students. Sometimes they do in physical argument, right? So teacher give the punishment. That is the meaning. The bad behavior is reduced by the punishment. That is all about behaviorism. We're gonna see more about
add
later.
something to the environment, the interaction is positive. When we take something away, the interaction is negative. So, for example, removing an undesirable activity from the agenda might be a negative reward, and adding an undesirable activity to it might be a positive punishment. Let's see some examples to better understand these concepts. First example, in Miss Green's first grade classroom, she's working with one of her students, Jenny, to help her with some challenging attention span issues. She's giving her a candy whenever she sees her focused on a task. This is an example of positive reward. Second example, in Mr. Red's third grade classroom, he quietly reminds a student to keep all 4 legs of his chair on the floor. This is an example of positive punishment. Yes, verbal praise and reminders qualify as adding something to the environment. Third example, to increase the number of students who turn in their homework each day, Miss Red announces that if the class has 100% completion on today's assignment, they won't have homework on Friday. This is an example of negative reward. Fourth example, Students in Mrs. Johnson's art class are having trouble sharing the supplies. Mrs. Johnson writes the word art on the board, and each time students have a disagreement over supplies, she erases a letter. If the word is erased completely, students will have to use pencil to complete their project for the day. This is an example of negative punishment. Theory number 2, cognitivism. Cognitive learning theory is largely based on the work of Jean Piaget, who rejected the idea that learners are passive and simply react to stimuli in the environment. Instead of focusing solely on observable behavior, cognitive theory seeks to explain how the mind works during the learning process. Like a computer, the mind takes in information, processes that information, then uses that information to produce learning outcomes. Piaget's 4 stages of development indicate the learner's ability to understand abstract, complex concepts. A few simple examples. First example, Miss Smith, a kindergarten teacher, works with students to verbally communicate their feelings. She knows that at this age they're naturally egocentric and struggle to see things from others' perspectives. Second example, to help students memorize the periodic table, Miss Williams co-creates various mnemonic devices with her class. Third example, Miss Jones uses a graphic organizer in order to help students write paragraphs with appropriate structure. Fourth example, at the start of every lesson, Mr. Davis asks questions to activate the prior knowledge of his students. He knows this will help to link the new learning concepts to previously retained ideas, increasing the likelihood that the new learning will be remembered. Theory number 3, constructivism. Constructivists see the learner as a constructor of knowledge. New learning is shaped by schemas, which the learner brings to the learning process. Lev Vygotsky is an important founder of constructivist learning theory. Vygotsky believed that learning is a collaborative process and that social interaction is fundamental for cognitive development. According to Vygotsky, students learn best when...
Cognitism is based on the mental process that is studied by Jean Piaget. Students getting information from outside, like teachers, and they do process those information in their brain, and then the outcome is using of those information. So outcome is produced. So that is cognitism. Here, the constructivism means it is all about interaction between people. People learn from something from others. That is constructivism. Social interaction. That is the emphasis of constructivism.
Collaboratively with those whose proficiency level is higher than their own, allowing them to complete tasks they're not yet able to do independently. Vygotsky identified these concepts as the more knowledgeable other and the zone of proximal development. Constructivist classrooms are student-centered, with the teacher acting as the facilitator. As usual, let's see some examples. First example, Ms. Rodriguez intentionally pairs students performing on or above grade level with students performing below grade level, inviting them to turn and talk about their learning throughout a lesson. Second example, Ms. Wilson uses collaborative learning to facilitate engagement with specific learning targets, ensuring heterogeneous student groupings. Third example, Mr. Brown uses problem-based learning to engage his students in solving real-world problems, meeting several learning targets while giving students autonomy to make decisions. He encourages students to work with peers who have different strengths than their own. Theory number 4, humanism. Humanist learning theory approaches learning as a way to fulfill an individual's potential rather than meeting specific learning targets. Maslow's research on the hierarchy of needs is a major concept within this theory, as it focuses on the whole person.
Maslow's hierarchy in human life, we may know this one.
Specifically, the cognitive and...
Actually, we learned this theory about psychologists, but in education, it is important, but we don't cover. Just know that there's a name of humanism that is based on Maslow human needs. Okay.
The needs of the learner. The theory holds that self-actualization is the ultimate goal of each individual. Learners are trusted to determine their own goals, set standards, and evaluate their own work. Thus, students are at the center of the humanist classroom. Teachers are facilitators and coaches, recognizing the unique needs of each student and supporting their academic and social development. Let's see some examples. First scenario. Miss Anderson begins each day with a morning meeting to check in on her students' emotional well-being and proactively teach them specific coping skills and strategies. Second scenario. Mr. Thomas, an 8th grade science teacher, provides his students a menu of assessment options to illustrate their mastery of learning targets for the unit. Third scenario. Miss Roberts, a 2nd grade teacher, invites each student to set their reading goal for the quarter. Fourth scenario. Miss Fox, the school's counselor, partners with local organizations to fill backpacks with food that students can take home to ensure they have food to eat over the weekend. Theory number 5, connectivism. Connectivism is one of the newest educational learning theories. It focuses on the idea that people learn and grow when they form connections. This can be connections with each other, or connections with their roles and obligations in their life. Hobbies, goals, and people can all be connections that influence learning. Teachers can utilize connectivism in their classroom to help students make connections to things that excite them, helping them learn. Teachers can use digital media to make good, positive connections to learning. They can help create connections and relationships with their students and with their peer groups that help students feel motivated about learning. As you can see, today's classrooms do not solely utilize a learning theory over another.
It is a simple. Constructivism is also an interaction. Okay, the goal of constructivism is collaboration. Okay, working together to learn from each other. Here, connectivism is more focused on the relation between students. Okay, sometimes they don't work together, they don't collaborate together, but good relationship between the students. Sometimes they give emotional support, emotional encouragement to their peer group. Okay, that is also about learning process. So that is connectivism. It is more about focusing on making relation. Constructivism is also about interaction, but more focused on working together, collaboration.
But instead incorporate multiple theories throughout the learning experience. Each theory has strengths and limitations, especially considering the realities of education in the 21st century. Educators must walk the narrow line between creating a student-centered classroom and meeting rigorous learning standards. Each of these theories has its strengths and its weaknesses. Which one of these 5 theories is your favorite? If you wish, leave a comment. If there's enough interest for one of these 5 theories, I might make a more in-depth video about it in the future. If you liked this video, don't miss the video, How to Study Faster.
Okay, in chapter 1, the main focus about a certain topic, which is facilitator. Okay, teacher is facilitator, not just only instructor. Okay. Let's see. Here, okay. Teacher is instructor. Just most people know instructor means give direction, transferring the knowledge to the students, right? Also here, a teacher has another word in facilitator. this is the most important role as teacher. And then that also includes mentor. The evaluator means, always you see the outcomes of students' performance, then you give feedback to students. That is evaluator. So I just want you to know the most important thing about teacher is facilitator. So we're gonna look sample story about okay, more about the facilitator. I have example of teacher as facilitator. Okay, here the teacher as facilitator of learning. That means teacher is creating conductive learning environment that fosters curiosity. Students' curiosity and students' engagement. Also, teacher as facilitator, they need to adopt instructional strategy to accommodate diverse learners. In LA, there are many different ethnic groups, right? Koreans, Japanese, Hispanics. All children have various cultural background, right? That is diverse learners. Not only about cultural background, about learning competency. Children have a different ability to learn how fast, how late they can learn. That is about competency. So you have to know, you have to apply certain teaching techniques to those various learners. Also, facilitator is providing the feedbacks and then assessment to help students reflect on their learning progress and give them let them grow in classroom settings. Then the concept of let me see. Okay, I'm gonna give you how facilitator works. Okay, I think this is kind of next. Oh, okay. Also, I just want to mention the learner's role, students' role in classroom. Okay, learning is also the most effective when students they are actively engaged or participate in the learning process. Students they learn the best when they are guided just beyond their current ability, highlighting the importance of teachers' support is the essential in learning for students. So it is also engaged in self-directed learning through research, inquiry, and practice. Applying critical thinking they learn in classroom to analyze, synthesize the information they learn in the classroom. Also, it needs collaborating with peer group to exchange ideas and perspectives. These are all aspects of learners' students' role in classroom. Okay. Okay. The handout that I gave you, it has example page. I think it is first. Yeah, page first. Yeah. It has example of how teacher facilitating the learning process in classroom. Okay. So let's say example of the topic: students learning in classroom. Okay, let's say a teacher made the concept of ecosystems when they study in earth science or biology, right? And then here, instead of simply learning lecture, and he just not giving only knowledges to the students. Teacher facilitates the learning process using inquiry-based approaches. Okay, you see a small chapter topic A, B, C, right? I'm gonna read about up to page 2. Okay, this is example. So, a small topic A, creating conducive learning environment. Teacher organizes classroom into small groups, right? That is encouraging collaborative learning, right? We see these settings a lot. And then teacher set up the aquarium in the classroom and ask students observe it and record the changes in plants and fish behavior over time. Then, small topic B, adopting instructional strategies. Okay, rather than teacher give direct answer to the students when they give when they ask something about ecosystem, right? He asks first guiding questions to the students, not giving just right answers. So he says, teacher says, how do you think the fish and plants depend on each other? That is a good question, right? Small aquarium, fish nest, some kind of water plants. Also, water plants need fish too. So what might happen if we add another species into this ecosystems? That is another good question too. Like, we see some uses, right? Some species planted in totally different environment, right? Then new species become dominate and make extinction to other species. So that is like collapsing the ecosystems because new species came into that environment, ecosystem environment. So that is breaking down the whole ecosystems. Some species extinct by new species, and other species grow bigger, in population. That is all change of ecosystem by adopting new species in existing ecosystem. So that is also a good question, right? What might happen if we add another species to this ecosystems? So he provides scaffolding by giving students access to research materials and letting them explore concepts on their own before discussing their findings. Basically, teachers' role is giving the guidance for students to find out the ability, find out the way they can find out the answer. That is the guidance. And small chapter C, providing feedback and assessment. So maybe few days of observation of aquarium, right? Students brings kind of final result of observation. So each students, they present their observations through group discussions and some kind of reports, right? Or other researches. So teacher give constructive feedback. Also, when he gives feedback, teacher asks students to refine their hypothesis based on evidence. Okay, question is this. But when you put new species in a small aquarium, what is gonna be happening, right? Then you guys watch what happened in that small aquarium. So you keep record the change of environment. And then if you see some species reduce in population, find out why, and you do some kind of a research, okay? Then you have students have small discussions and reports, and then you guide them to make theory, hypothesis, okay? So when you add new species in small aquarium, you observe it, and then what is the hypothesis? What is the final words about adding new species in ecosystems? You just not giving them the right answer instantly, you give them the guidance for them to find out the way they can find out the answer. That is facilitating. So teacher need to allow students to adjust their experiment, and also teacher need to promote the interactive learning processes. These are all about combined with facilitating and student-centered approaches, not teacher-centered approach in classroom settings. teacher is not just, when, okay, we're gonna see another video in teacher-centered and student-centered approaches. Okay, here, so the teacher gives guidance about learning rather than just transmitting the knowledges, right? Teacher's role as facilitator, that is making sure that students engage in critical thinking, inquiry, and problem-solving techniques, and also this all leading to deeper understanding of ecosystem. So this example aligns with constructivism theory. Vygotsky, constructivism, right? Cooperation, collaboration with students. They do small discussion, right? They watch aquarium, together. Okay, they can, take the role, right? Okay, hey, John, you watch small fish. Okay, me, I'm gonna watch bigger fish. Okay, Peter, you watch what's gonna happen to, the plant in the aquarium. That is all, works of collaboration. That is constructivism. So that is emphasizing the learning is the most effective. Why? Because students are actively engaged in learning knowledges. And finally, with teachers' support. So when we talk about the facilitator means teacher giving support, encouragement, guidance to the students. Teaching setting should be always student-centered approach. You have to think of yourself as you are students. So as your students, what would you like to learn? That is student-centered approach. Also, constructivism. That means when you do teaching, when you want to bring some kind of result from the students, you always consider do something like collaboration. Okay, that's the example of facilitating. Okay, then let me see. We wanna move on to another topic. Okay, here I'm gonna talk more about teacher-centered instruction. Okay. And then student-centered instruction or approach or learning. Okay. So teaching approaches and strategy. Here is the small topic. You always have to approach with something to the student, and then always you have to have kind of strategy. You have to plan how you want to teach, what you want students to learn about. So there are two different approaches. Teacher-centered approach. Another one is student-centered approach. So teacher-centered approaches, that is the method, that is the way which is focused on direct instruction from the teacher. That is teacher-centered. It is simple, okay? Student ask the answer of some question, like math question. What is 2 times 2? You give answer right away. That is 4. That is, which is teacher-centered approach. It is based on learning. Sometimes I don't say this is bad, okay, right? This is good for effective learning, for information delivery. Also, this one gives step-by-step guidance and demonstration. When we do some kind of math in high school, right? High school teacher give step-by-step instruction about some kind of equation. When we do calculus, geometry, algebra, right? He gives some steps to bring the answers. And he applied equations, each steps. That is also teacher-centered approach. It is good for just direct instructional learning. Okay? Good for instant information delivery. It can be done step-by-step guidance and demonstration. That is teacher-centered approach. And another way we are talking about is student-centered approach, this is my personal opinion. Okay, that might be good for kindergarten to 12th grade students. Sometimes, not only one approach is used. Teacher, they can, use mixed of teacher-centered approach, student-centered approach. Sometimes you have to make decision which portion of those two approaches can be applied more when you teach. So, student-centered approaches. So, this method, which is promoting active student engagement, participation, okay? Student-centered means student activity, student engagement, student participation. That is the factors which is more focused about student-centered approaches. So in these settings, you just not giving the answers about some question right away, okay? You give encouragement students to ask another questions. You give them, you are supporting. They can find the answers on their own. That is student-centered approach. Also, it needs collaboration learning. Students, they can work together. They work in group, then they can solve the certain problems. Also, this is good about experimental learning. Okay, like most like in colleges, I'm not saying which one is good or bad, okay? Student-centered, teacher-centered. The teacher always need to, which portion they have to use more. Okay, like this. A lecture, okay, teacher-centered approaches in chemistry. In classroom, teacher explains, how atoms combine, each other. Then that makes, molecules. A group of molecule makes some kind of, reactions, right? And explains. Then that is giving right instant instruction to the students. Then he bring the students to the facility or research center to practice that theories, right? So that might be student-centered approaches. Actually, students they do perform experiment in laboratory, right? So that might be group working, that might be collaborating working. So that is student-centered approaches. Okay. We're gonna see a short video again about student-centered approach, teacher-centered approach.
Student-centered learning occurs when the student, rather than the teacher, is the focus of a lesson. It's easiest to explain student-centered learning by comparing it to a teacher-centered approach. A teacher-centered classroom primarily involves the instructor dictating the content, pace, and structure of the learning experience. By contrast, a student-centered approach will ensure the lesson is catered to the specific needs of students. The approach caters to individual learning preferences and needs, providing a more tailored and personally relevant learning experience. A student-centered lesson might involve, for example, slowing down the lesson if the students need more time, or changing the instructional style to make it most understandable to students. Common student-centered learning scenarios can include 1. Encouraging autonomous learning. We are embracing student-centered learning whenever we provide students with a degree of autonomy over their learning, for example, by allowing them to choose topics, projects, and activities that interest them. 2. Encouraging collaboration. Student-centered learning typically promotes collaborative work, where students interact, share ideas, and learn from each other rather than passively learning from the teacher. 3. Encouraging reflective practice. A student-centered approach encourages students to reflect on their learning journey, assess their progress, and adjust their learning strategies for optimal learning. 4. Using inquiry-based learning. In student-centered learning, inquiry-based approaches are often utilized, where students are encouraged to explore questions, problems, and scenarios. This encourages them to explore rather than simply listen to a teacher. 5. Using diverse assessment methods. Student-centered learning often employs a variety of assessment methods, such as portfolios, presentations, and projects, which enable students to demonstrate understanding and skills in multiple ways, accommodating different learning preferences and strengths. Another way to embrace student-centered learning is to differentiate instruction. To learn about the instruction, click on.
Okay. So here
Diverse assessment methods.
So student-centered approach means autonomous learning. You have to let students learn themselves, okay? And then collaboration, they help each other, they work together, there's collaboration. Reflect, practice. When they do perform certain kind of task, they always look back how they did, what was the result, what they missed to bring some kind of result. That is reflection, practice, right? Also, it is inquiry-based approach. Some students have different level of competency about learning. They have different ability to learn certain topics, right? So you have to adapt your teaching skill to their various learning skills or various inquiries too. Different needs of students too. So that is inquiry-based approaches. Then another one was, also there should be, diverse assessment method should be used. Okay. So that is about, two different approaches when teacher in classroom, teacher-centered approach and student-centered approach. Okay, and chapter 1, I think maybe we can finish this. Okay, maybe. Okay, lastly, chapter 1. There should be always assessment, evaluation in teaching and learnings. Assessment, that is helping the major, right? Okay, some student, take the test, so you major. Oh, you perform good. It's okay. On math test, or you perform, poor in math test, that is measuring. So this is all about not measuring. Also, that is include understanding how children do their performance. And then instructional effectiveness. There are 3 different ways of assessment. Okay, formative assessment. That is ongoing checks for understandings. Sometimes you give quizzes, discussions, right? That is formative assessment. Another assessment is a summative assessment. Like, at the end of semester, you give evaluation about final learning outcomes. You give them, students like, final exam, final project, final reports, right? That is summative assessment. Also, sometimes you give, authentic assessment. It is, real-world task, like portfolios and case studies. Let's say, authentic assessment is like, a good example is like a volunteering, right? Some students, they do volunteers in certain organization, like helping elders in hospitals, right? Also, supporting any, participating in any, social activities. That is all about voluntary. So that is authentic assessment. Things that you learn in classroom, and then you have to practice those things in real world task. That is authentic assessment. So when you do assessment, there are 3 different assessments. Formative, every class you give quiz, discussion. That is formative. Summative assessment, it is like midterm exam, final exam. Then lastly, authentic assessment, that is a real world task performance. Students, they learn in classroom, they do perform, they do certain kind of voluntary work in real world. That is authentic assessment. Okay, then since you do assessment and evaluation for the students, you have to give them the feedback. Feedback is also important because you just not giving them the result. You just not giving them the score. Okay? You provide. By providing feedback, you make their learning outcome might be enhanced. Like you can encourage by giving feedback, right? Okay, Peter, you do good on final test about math. You did good on geometry, but if you do little better on calculus, you may be, you may be entitled to, apply certain colleges to become your, mathematicians, right? Something like that. So that gives encouragement. Also, you find out, you give them instruction, the weak point of their learning process. Also, you give them strong point of their learning process. Like I said before, hey Peter, you're really good on geometry, but you give more effort to make better understanding of calculus. So that is good feedback. You find strong point, big point, and give advice, supporting, encouragement to the students. That is feedback. Also, that is another important factor in teaching progress. Okay. I think okay, next week we're gonna study about different learning style and teaching approaches. Okay, we're gonna go more about okay, I think that's all.